Hi guys, it's Carl Melvin here. So if you're new to the channel, please click subscribe down the bottom and keep in touch with the videos I'm uploading. So in the context of family estrangement, I speak a lot about the experiences and the challenges of estrangement, but the one I seem to come back to the most is this deep level of uncertainty. And the reason I speak about it so much is because it's just so consistent across every client I've ever spoken to, or every email I get, or just every general conversation about estrangement that I have. So we have to ask ourselves, why is there so much uncertainty? And often if there's been a history of really abusive behaviours or just destructive attitudes or behaviours within the family, it can be incredibly traumatic, and that trauma leaves a psychological scar, and it makes it very difficult to find any clarity. And the mind almost becomes a chaotic space where all these deep emotions and memories and experiences are brought back up, and we find it hard to find clarity amongst all this enmeshment and all these difficult memories and experiences. Another reason really comes down to the ambiguity of estrangement, and there are so many questions around it. You know, will this estrangement last forever? Do I want to reconcile with these people? Do they want to reconcile with me? Do I tell anybody? Should I keep this a secret? And is it time to grieve now, or do I need to wait? Maybe we'll be reconciled later on in a few years. So it's understandable that there will be so much uncertainty around us. What I found with my clients is that really there are components that can help alleviate this uncertainty. It could be distance, it could be time, it could be support, and they give us some measure of clarity and distance from the whole situation so we can see what's going on. But what sets people back massively is the prospect of a funeral or having to visit somebody that's quite sick and in hospital that you're estranged from. And you can imagine, obviously, there's a huge time element to this. So there's an urgency to act now, to decide now, what should I do now? And people feel a huge pressure to just act impulsively. You know, if I don't visit now, something might happen. There could be consequences. There could be further pressures. People might judge me for not visiting. And these are all real fears. And again, I'm only touching the surface of just how complex this one scenario could be. So this video is just about exploring your options, exploring how you manage to visit and how you manage the decision to visit. Okay guys, the first thing we do is we explore the pressures to visit or to attend, whether it's a funeral, maybe it's visiting somebody that's sick in hospital. And often these pressures are external, so they could be coming from people in your life who you're not estranged from. And they may be playing devil's advocate. They could be saying, the most common thing I see with people that I work with, that someone tells them, you're going to regret this if you don't go. So you need to make the peace. And they're almost adding more pressure to an already pressurized situation. Now, that pressure could also come from estranged members as well. They could be texting you or calling you saying, no, you need to come here and visit for whatever the scenario is. So if it is somebody neutral who's playing devil's advocate, my first question is, what's their context? You know, what do they really understand about what's happening in your relationship, in your specific scenario? Because very often people project their own relationships, which is very normal but also very inappropriate, because their relationship is not the same as your relationship. So I would use that information. Ask yourself, are they really, can they see your relationship for what it is, or are they simply projecting their own reality onto this? If the pressure is from estranged family members, I'll explore what's the agenda, what's their intent. And maybe their intent is good. Maybe, look, we just want you to be there. Maybe you want to know, maybe you want to be part of it. But it may also be, they might have their own fantasy notions, or very romanticized notions about an estrangement. But that doesn't match the reality of what has happened in the relationship and all the pressures and all the behaviours which have led to the estrangement in the first place. So again, explore where these external pressures are coming from and what's their intent behind it. But there may not even be anybody telling you to go. It may be purely internal. And we have to explore these internal pressures. Is it a fear of judgment that you might have that you're projecting out? And very often, if we're particularly fearful around judgment, we may have been exposed to excessively critical people in our life. It could be parents, siblings, it could be anybody who's an authoritative figure. And that almost creates a locked in parental state inside of us, where this becomes triggered when we make a decision to do something for us. All of a sudden, a set of emotions and memories and feelings are triggered of a time when we were criticised or judged for standing up for ourselves or making an assertive decision. And that creates this vicious feedback loop where we're not comfortable with how we feel, we're not comfortable with this state, and we kind of bow to the pressures and we visit. So again, part of the job is being able to step back and looking externally at all these pressures, but also going deep inside. doesn't necessarily resolve them, but it means we're not acting out of them, or we're not acting out old patterns where we reconcile or we go back into the drama of the family without first assessing, is this the right decision for you, or am I acting out of impulse instead of conscious decision? So, as I said, regret is quite a common theme for a lot of my clients when it comes to having to visit somebody or attend a funeral. But and like everything else, we explore the regrets and we ask ourselves, well, is it true? Does it actually match your experience? Does it match how you feel about the relationship and the estrangement in general? And if it is, well, then we ask ourselves, well, why are you regretful? Is it because maybe you feel the person you're estranged from deserves another chance? Do you regret your contribution to the estrangement? Maybe you regret that this could be the last chance to reconcile. There may not be another opportunity. And often the regret is an extension if there's kids who are maybe impacted by the estrangement as well, and you want to mitigate or limit the impact it might have on other people. There could be a sense of regret over if I don't fix this now, this could be it, and this could be having long lasting impact on other relationships, not just on you. Regret is a huge burden, and in the same way that having to visit is actually a huge burden, because you're being expected to drop the reality, drop how you feel, drop the really negative experience you have between each other, and go and visit. And the process of visiting can be, as I said before, very triggering, incredibly stressful, and maybe not necessarily appropriate to you at this time in your life. Again, each individual has to make the right decision. But what I always try and encourage people to do is offload that burden. And if it means anything, figuratively, imaginatively, imagining a big, huge rock on your back that's weighing you down. And that's what regret feels like. And that's what this burden is like. And just lift it up and throw it to the side. And then sit with the idea of, do I want to visit? Is it the right time for me to visit? Is it the right time to reconcile, or do I just show up for closure? And again, we'll explore why people visit under these type of circumstances first. But I'd almost say step one is try and offload the burden and the responsibility and the regret sooner rather than later, and then you might make a more informed decision, and a decision again that isn't acted out of impulse. Okay, so once I've encouraged my clients to park not just the regret, but the fear, the guilt, the shame, and all of this stuff up here that comes with this relationship dynamic, put it all to the side. And I just get them to sit down and just sit with the idea of visiting. Don't think about it, but just notice how your body responds to this very notion of having to visit. And it's very difficult because the mind is racing, it's always thinking, it's always planning, trying to project into the future and how things might go. But just sit with it and notice physical sensations in the body. And these are important cues. It might give us information or insight into how the body might want to respond. So notice, maybe the feet are moving, maybe your alignment of your body, maybe you're leaning forward, maybe you're leaning back, maybe you're holding your breath, maybe your heart is racing. But it may also bring to attention a psychological pain or emotional pain that's trapped in the body as well. And I appreciate that sometimes this pain is too much. And maybe it is too much. Maybe you need to listen to that. Maybe it's saying that this pain is telling you, no, you need to mind yourself a little bit more. And now is not the time. And you have to self-care and protect yourself. Other times the pain may be difficult but manageable. And maybe this pain is something that you've carried for a great amount of many years. And maybe this pain has informed many of your relationships, especially with family. And for some, even just an acknowledgement of that can be quite profound. But others, they make another decision. Well, I'm actually going to work through the pain, and I'm still going to visit because I don't want to let this pain inform who I am. I don't want this pain to inform my life decisions. And they almost want to face the pain, and part of that process is facing up to family. But again, every scenario and every situation is unique. You have to make the right decision for you. If your body is saying no, or if the emotional pain is saying no, then maybe listen to it, but also ask what it needs. Maybe your body needs a bit of self-care, maybe it needs to be a bit of self-regulation and nurturing and stabilization, which I'm going to talk about next. But maybe the body also needs to reconnect and actually confront the source of your pain and stress. It's a very difficult decision. I'm not saying this is an easy process at all. It's not. But maybe just step back, park all the thoughts and the emotions and all the rest, and sit with the very notion of actually showing up and see what comes up. You might be surprised. Okay guys, so at this point you still could be very undecided. You're not sure if you're going to attend, you're going to visit, you're going to attend a funeral. and there's still a lot of uncertainty there. But what I generally work on my clients at this point is pre and post stabilization. What that means is that we look for resources that my clients can use to help them to ground and to stay calm and stay as present as possible and not get hijacked by trauma and by all these old experiences which send our central nervous system into a hyper state where we're on anxious or on edge, and we're dealing with emotions which are just not manageable. Now, our central nervous system could also send us down to a hypo state where we just feel empty and feel apathy and feel drained, and generally what we tend to happen is we spike up and down. If you can imagine a window of tolerance here, which is, and inside this window of tolerance is our level of manageable stress. Hyper is at a higher state where it's very difficult to manage, but it sends us up here. And then after we hit a hyper state, we might spike down to a hypo state where we feel drained. After that spike of energy or stress, we come crashing down. So pre and post stabilization is all about finding methods and techniques and tools that are appropriate to you, to help you to stay relaxed. And very often we focus on the mind, we focus on meditation, but I like to bring it back to the body. How do we take care of our body? And we can start to use our senses, especially smell. Some people use lavender scents to try and calm themselves. Very, very effective. Certain sounds can be very relaxing. Touch is very useful. Some people use tapping methods. If you go to YouTube and type in emotional freedom technique, I think it's a tapping method that helps people to ground themselves a little bit. Just to be kind to the body, have a bath can be nice. Eating nice food. Other things as well, I sometimes get my clients to tap into nostalgia, watch old films, something that was a source of joy to them before. Maybe it'll put a smile on them. And again, a lot of this is about distraction as well, because you become overwhelmed by trying to decide what to do. Having your partner talk down as well. I don't mean talk down to you in a condescending way, but talk to you in a way which might calm you down. And that could be done through voice, through modulation, making sure they're talking in a calm voice, through eye contact, through affection, just very gentle physical affection. I know one client or partner wraps her in a blanket. I know it seems quite basic, but it can be very nurturing as well. And again, the goal is to stay as grounded in the present and not get dragged into the future or dragged back into the past with all these old experiences. Now, I'm conscious not everybody has the level of support needed to be able to talk them down, but we learn to do it ourselves. We self-talk. We can self-soothe through our own voice and through our own touch and reconnecting with our own bodies. Now, self-care does not come easy to a lot of people, and I literally started working with a new client during the week, and it's interesting listening to her. She had quite a traumatic life in her home, but self-care is an alien concept to her. It doesn't come natural to her at all. So, we just presume that people naturally know how to self-care. They don't. And don't beat yourself up if you find that it's not coming to you naturally. But you have to practice. You have to take time and look around, see how other people mind themselves and take care of themselves. And it is unique to you. Everybody's different. You have to find the right resources and the right tools that work for you. And then post-stabilization, after let's say you have visited and it even if it's not necessarily overly stressful, but the act of going will be very stressful. Being around these people can be very stressful, and that's a build-up of energy that has to be discharged. And the best way to discharge is through movement. And generally, I always encourage the movement to be bilateral, something that involves left-right movement. It could be running, could be walking. Yoga is great. Martial arts involving patterns of movement are all very, very effective. But again, they have to actively do these things. You have to prioritize them. I do them sooner rather than later as well. So after the event has passed, make sure that there's a window of opportunity to go for a run or whatever it needs to do. And it's very much about processing the emotions, but it's also removing the cortisol buildup. And when we go back to very stressful events or situations or meet people who are a source of stress to us, it spikes our cortisol levels up way past the manageable level, which is why you're feeling all these physical sensations. And it doesn't always naturally come down itself, so we actively have to do that through movement and through expression and just generally looking after our own bodies. Okay guys, at this point you may have decided I am going to visit, even though it's incredibly stressful, I'm not comfortable doing this, I'm going to go anyway. So it's important to plan the visit. And the first step is very much about grounding, especially in the initial moment where you're in the same room as these people. It's going to be incredibly stressful, possibly very overwhelming. So we take the attention away from all these people and back into us, and we find a way to ground ourselves. That could be just noticing your feet, how your feet are connected to the ground. Maybe it could be breathing, just deciding, yeah, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to just nod if people talk to me, but I'm literally going to focus on my breathing. people, especially if our face gets flushed or it looks obvious that we're experiencing symptoms of distress, people don't really know anything until you actually tell them. So I encourage my clients, don't say too much just at the first few minutes. Now, what's also really helpful is to just sit back and watch everything. This is maybe something that you've not done before, where you're literally just taking in not just the environment, but maybe it's a new room to you, maybe it's an old room, but also observe dynamics within the family, the communication patterns, who's speaking to who, how are they speaking to each other, what are the topics, but really that was body language, posture, tone of voice. All these things tell you a lot about what's happening in the family and how they communicate, but also how uncomfortable they might be. And while doing all that, it may take your attention away from how you're feeling, because your mind will be honed in on you. That's understandable. We're all like that. But it also gives you some insight into what's happening in the family, and it may also break your own reactive patterns. So you're not just falling back into the old hierarchy, the way the families was established before, or the old role, or maybe you're the peacekeeper, or maybe you're the person that initiates conversation just for your own peace of mind. Break all that and observe how people respond to that. And you may find that people are actually a little bit softer than they were. Maybe their attitude is a little bit kinder. Maybe there is a little bit more respect there. And maybe that's a cue that, okay, maybe some change has happened. Maybe I might let people in just a little bit more. But then again, maybe not. Maybe people have stayed exactly as they are. Maybe they're so locked into their reality and the enmeshment within the overall family that they aren't going to change. But then you decide, I'm happy with this distance and I'm not going to go any closer than this. One thing is also be careful around emotional ambushes. So this could be opportunistic people. They realize this is a sad time. People are quite vulnerable. Maybe this is a time for me to get back or influence you. I've experienced this personally. To be quite honest with you, you do have to be careful. My best advice there is to keep it public. Don't go off into other rooms or corners to have these conversations. No, we'll just have a chat here, because having people around you could mitigate their behaviours and may reduce the sting of what they might say, but it also may control their behaviours just a little bit, so they can't be too nasty, they can't say hurtful things too much. But one important resource that I work with all my clients is the concept of building a shield, and it's a psychological shield, and it's essentially a boundary. Now, we talk about boundaries, we talk about saying no, we talk about physical acts of boundaries and practical things, but the ultimate boundary is inside ourselves. But rationally, we know that we need to say no, but it's very difficult to actually put that into practice, and we have to find a boundary that is appropriate to you. I often use visual aids with my clients, maybe a piece of string, wrap it around in the therapy session, just out there, if you're not wrap it around it, but put it around their area where they're sitting, and get them to conceive this shield, and just as a memory cue, so that's in the back of their mind. The next time they're seeing their family, they can conceive what this shield looks like. Sometimes guided meditation might be useful, or even having an object like a piece of jewellery that could be a reminder of the shield that's around me. And I see a lot of people who cling to pieces of jewellery, maybe a spiritual object, could be anything that's relevant to you, but something that helps you to ground yourself but get a sense of safety inside of you, and that can be effective in at least getting through the process. And it is stressful, it's difficult, this is not easy, they all require a huge amount of willpower, and I do empathise with anyone having to reconnect us, but we have to plan it and we have to work with it, and we actively have to build up all these resources and build our shields so we can manage this situation as best as we can. So I try to be practical with these videos just to give you something to work with, but I'm not delusional to the actual reality of this situation. It's very stressful. It's a very tough decision to make, whether to visit or whether to not visit, and it's a decision that only you can make. One thing that I often do with my clients is actually just explore their own priorities and the present day priorities. And really look at where are they now, and again, is this the right time for them to visit? And at the moment, if they're not in a great place, if their mental or physical health isn't great, if their career isn't great, if they're having other relationships problems outside of the estranged people, maybe their priority needs to be safety and stability. And then we'll then use that to decide what's the most appropriate action to take. Maybe if my priority is stability, will visiting family be a source of stability? It might be, it might not be. Use that as a decision maker. Your priority could be closure. You could be at a point where I need to end this, or I need to really move on. And sometimes showing up for a funeral, for you, not for anybody else, can be an act of that closure. It could be a demonstration that this is me saying goodbye. And use it as a symbolic gesture of letting go as well. It may not be the same for the people you're going to visit. Maybe their intention is to pull you back into it. It isn't about them. It's very much about you and what's right for you and your present day priority. The priority could be to challenge yourself. Maybe you're along your own self development. You've done a lot of work on yourself, and you're curious to how you might feel around them. That could inform your decision. Maybe you decide, yeah, I'm going to visit, but I know why I'm visiting, and it matches my own goals and it matches my own priorities right now. So that might be help you make your own decision. But I know it's incredibly hard to come to a conclusion. And people will give you advice like me or people elsewhere, and that advice is all very well meaning and very well intentioned, but ultimately it is your relationship. You're living with the consequences, and I empathize with you completely. But as I said already, I would encourage you to maybe offload the responsibility aspect of it and definitely stop the clock, the psychological clock, because again, if it's a funeral, there could be a date. If it's someone sick in hospital, again, there's this massive sense of urgency, and I'm not dismissing that, and it's tragic that this has happened. It's tragic. There's an estrangement in the first place. The fact there's now a loss as connected to the estrangement, it's no less tragic. It's almost amplifies the tragedy of this whole situation. So I do completely understand, but take the pressure off a little bit and then make the most appropriate decision for your scenario now. Look, guys, I hope this was helpful. Please leave comments down below. Maybe share it if it might help somebody that you know. You have my email address. I'm going to display it now in a second. Don't hesitate to reach out. If you want to ask questions, I'm always here. I'll get back to you as quick as I can. And that's it, guys. Take care and mind yourself.